Hi, this is Zachary. I'm an attorney at the law office of Zachary D. Kamikowski, PLLC. And I just want to make a short video about the differences between a single and joint revocable living trust. So here are some diagrams. We have two diagrams which will walk through some of the differences. Now, in this example, Tom and Cindy, they have decided to make a joint trust. And what they've done is that they have put their community property and their individual property into a single trust. But they have attached a schedule to this joint trust which shows the separation of Tom's individual property, which is $1 million, Cindy's individual property, which is $2 million, and then their shared community property. And just to remind you, Texas is a community property state. So as they accumulate further property, whether community or individual, they would fund it into the joint trust, and then they would designate in the schedules whether it was community or individual property. So, for example, suppose that Tom and Cindy acquired a vacation home. They would put that into community property if they had done it together. So then they would list on the schedule, the vacation home is community property. If Tom or Cindy received an inheritance from their parents, then they could choose to either put that in the community property bucket or into their individual property, their separate property designation. Now, upon the death of Tom, his share of the community property, $2 million, and his individual property would fund into a marital trust. So in this example, that would be $3 million. And then at Tom's death, Cindy's share of the community property, $2 million, plus her individual property would flow into a survivor's trust. Now the survivor's trust remains revocable. Cindy can change it. She could put it in her own name again, or she could do whatever she wants with it. Alternatively, the marital trust from Tom, that is irrevocable. Cindy cannot change that. So in one respect, that gives Cindy some asset protection. Her creditors cannot come after the funds in the marital trust. But it also provides Tom some comfort that his intentions will be carried out. Suppose that some Lothario bro comes and woos Cindy up after the death of Tom, and he has designs on Tom's share of the finances. If it's put in this marital trust, Tom can be sure that he can provide for his wife, Cindy, during her life, but upon her death, the funds will go to his beneficiaries of choice, whether his joint children with Tom and Cindy or his favorite charities. So let's now look at how this would work if they did individual trusts. In this example, Tom and Cindy have set up individual revocable living trusts. So, in order to fund those trusts, they've put their individual property in their respective trusts, and then they've divided the community property that they had at that time. At the time the trust was made, they put their community property, they split it in half, and they put it into each of their respective trusts. So in this example, they each have $2 million. So upon Tom's death, his trust will go into the marital trust. And we're not using the bypass trust because of the exemption level we're assuming in this example it's 10 million, but it's actually closer to 12 million right now. So we're putting aside the estate tax considerations for now. So with Tom's death, Tom's trust goes into a marital trust. And then it has the same restrictions that we saw in the other example. He would say that he would provide for Cindy during her life for probably health, education, maintenance, and support. And then at Cindy's death, it would distribute according to his wishes to his preferred beneficiaries, whether to the joint children of Cindy and Tom or any charitable interests that he might have. So in contrast to the prior example with the joint trust, Cindy's trust doesn't change. It stays the same. Cindy's trust would remain revocable until her passing. And just like before, Tom's marital trust is irrevocable, so Cindy can't change it. So in this example with the individual revocable living trusts, as they accumulate property, they would have to designate it into the separate trusts. They would have to fund it into the separate trusts as they accumulated it. So if they bought that vacation home together and that was community property, they would have to split the shares. They have to split it into Tom's trust and Cindy's trust at the time of purchase. And in the same way, if Tom or Cindy received an inheritance that was their individual property, then they would just fund it directly into their respective trusts. So in some respects, upon the death of Tom, the administration of the trust is easier than in the joint trust situation, because Tom's trust just goes into a marital trust. There's no need for an administrator to divide the property. If we go back to the joint trust situation, we could see that at the death of Tom, an administrator would need to divide, okay, this is the separate property of Tom, and this is the community this is one half of the community property, and then the administrator would fund that into the marital share, and then they would take what's left and put that into the survivor's trust. In some respects, during life, the joint trust is easier to administer because you would just write on the schedule, this is the property of Tom, this is the community property we have, and this is Cindy's property. The work would be delayed until the death of Tom. In the individual revocable living trust situation, the work would have to be done during life. The separation of the property between the community and the individual property of Tom and Cindy, that would have to be titled very carefully during their lives. So this was just a short video to show you the difference between an individual and a joint trust for a married couple. Again, my name is Zachary, and I'm an attorney at the law office of Zachary D. Kamikowski, PLLC, and I help parents with minor children and individuals nearing retirement achieve their life and legacy goals. If you have any questions, I encourage you to go to my website, txwealthlaw.com. Thank you.